Little to no constituents of my generation remember this man. His mannerisms seem shocking, and the amount of enthusiasm in the audience almost inconceivable. In this day where closed studio commenters exchange constant chit-chatter on national television, we have abandoned the old ways of broadcasted media in favor for a more distant solution. It is with a dying pragmatism that we consult ourselves on important national issues. His name is Morton Downey Jr., one of the first American television talk show hosts to receive national reception. But he's different from this day's publicists, as previously mentioned, because instead of bleak commentary about politics, he was more than confrontational. At the time, television stations bid for watch time, keeping their viewers entertained and invested while ads ran by, and Downey Jr. provided just that. A pattern of inviting a guest onto the show, inviting an opponent, starting off in a rather mild manner only to go off on a tangent of false statements and ridiculous claims, along with an almost Orwellian-like audience with chanted smears and yells throughout the whole thing. A despicable sight, yet an interesting perspective. In 1988, he questioned Ron Paul for a large segment of this show. Ron, a Reagan-era anti-Vietnam Republican congressman, always spoke in a calm voice.
Libertarian and a distorted explanation.
No, sir. You people gave it to yourselves in your platform.
No, let me explain that.
Which differed quite greatly from Downey's style of questioning, that would interrupt his explanation on multiple occasions.
Would you go over to Vietnam and serve for him?
No, there would be no Vietnam Wars. It's the libertarians that are...
There'd be no nation! There'd be no nation! But the liberty, there'd be no
money here at home.
We'll be back in a second. Get out of here.
Downey excuses himself from a smoking habit by saying that he would simply quit as soon as nicotine is outlawed, with a claim that he supports this thesis.
We even permit people to smoke cigarettes. That happens to be the most deadly drug in the United States today. Kills 320,000 people.
I appreciate it.
And maybe we ought to make it illegal.
I wish you'd ban it. I wish you'd ban it.
Good.
If you would,
then
sir, I'd put it out in your eye
the,
right now.
By the amount of accusations he throws at the former congressman, you can assume he is more than honest with himself. But nevertheless, when a seldom accusation was made about him refusing to quit his smoking habit, he initiated legal trouble. I cannot help but think of Downey as a hypocrite when watching this clip. 12 years after this segment debuted, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, while being treated for pneumonia, and had one of his lungs removed from his body. A supporter of tobacco companies throughout his life, Downey did a complete about-face on the issue of tobacco. A former member of the National Smokers Alliance became a staunch anti-smoking activist. After being diagnosed with lung cancer, he commented, "I'd spawned a generation of kids to think it was cool to smoke a cigarette. Kids walked up to me until a matter of weeks ago. They'd have a cigarette in their hand and they'd say, 'Hey Mort,' or 'Hey Mort, autograph my cigarette.' And I'd do it." Downey blamed tobacco companies for lying to consumers about cigarettes in 1996. But in this interview, he yells when Paul suggests that excessive tobacco use is not unlike drug addiction.
We think that smoking sometimes...
Wait a second, Lisa, I'll let you jump in here.
This
Well, it
is
happens
correct.
to be my...
Matter of fact,
All right, that's good, guys.
But-
It also happens to be
more-
my personal business if I want to kill my 4-year-old kid, right?
No, wait a minute.
How can I take anyone seriously who looks like...
Stick to the issue. The issues are drugs
I'll
and
stick
freedom.
to the issues,
Listen,
pal.
Mr.
If
Potato
I had a
Head.
slime like you in the White House, I'd puke on you.
Perhaps the most hypocritical thing of all is that while Morton died in 2001 at the age of 68, Ron Paul at the age of 84 is still going strong. A retired physician and politician, having run multiple times on behalf of both the Republican and Libertarian parties for the presidency of the United States and Congress, he deems his career successful. And unlike Downey, he has no regret towards his past achievements. His son has become a senator as well. The Just Say No campaign failed disastrously, and thanks in part to the war on drugs that followed, drug use in the United States increased drastically throughout the 80s and 90s. The logical fallacies used by Downey did almost nothing to hurt the libertarian movement, though ever since both Republicans and Democrats turned strongly against him, the party grew in size as a result. Gary Johnson received 4,400,000 votes and 3.27% of the national vote in the 2016 national election, when we were forced to pick between Donald Trump for the Republicans and Hillary Clinton for the Democrats. Millions of Americans cast a vote that wished for a libertarian to be president, but the main arguments against Johnson was that there was not a single libertarian in Congress. He could not unite the country. Last Tuesday, on April 28th of 2020, Justin Amash, a Republican who received wide attention after being one of the only in his party to vote for Trump's impeachment earlier in the year, launched an investigative committee to adjust his run for the presidency and began fundraising. Later that day, he changed party allegiance and became the first ever Libertarian congressman in the House of Representatives, where his seat was adjourned to the very middle. But the media did not shut an eye, they did not even mention, for the late reactions to the coronavirus epidemic had already been stocking up the numbers. The mainstream news does not notice that the majority of Americans want this epidemic to be over, denounces protesters for wishing on the basic rights, and keeps repeating the same perspective. They take their usual manner of disrespecting the audience and their belief to think for themselves and keep scaring the public into submission. This year, I don't know if there's going to be an election in the United States. It has never been a country to delay its vote simply because of an epidemic. The Revolutionary War was fought when smallpox was raging throughout the British Empire. It only helped the public. But the very concept of an empire was disgraced by the founding fathers. Granted, you could make the argument of the lack of progressives in America at the time, but the United States were little less than a breakaway slave and port colony. Over the years, thanks in part to the vast emptiness of the continent upon which it resided and the function as a mediator for world politics, situated on a completely different landmass and safe from European conflict, its late intervention in the world wars determined the outcome of global politics, and the nation now rests as something of a new Rome. But every Rome needs a Caesar, and that we have too. So this video goes out to the thousands of Twitter commentators that have been calling the Libertarian Party a spoiler and encouraging against Amash's run. For me, the choice is easy. For many, though, they still have their doubts about third parties. When you vote for a third party, be it the Libertarian Party, Greens, or even the Socialists, you don't throw your vote away. Just because you use a write-in ballot doesn't mean you're wrong, but simply that you have an opinion different from the major collective. A country founded upon the power of the individual should not go down in history as one of the most divided places on earth, and some of the worst violators of basic privileges. And for that to happen, the American public needs to acknowledge that none of us know the backroom deals between the Republicans and Democrats. Them agreeing on an issue is not good, because they no longer rely on the support of the public. The second the two shake hands, be it at a ceremony, an occasion, an inauguration, a deal in a shady alley pertaining to the details of a topical bill, America is left with no other choice. While you may not agree with Amash or his policies, this occasion is historic. The yellow dot remains an everlasting proof that we still live in a democratic system, and the decision made by Amash is similar to the decision made by Trump, who sacrificed his status as an old American symbol, golfing with Bloomberg, drinking with Epstein, renowned worldwide as a successful businessman, to run an election which alienated a country that once clapped their hands for him. It was the ridiculousness of his campaign that made him president, and the lack of a better choice on the side of the other party. Voting for a third party is not throwing your vote away. Again, you make a decision. You stand up for your ideals in the face of certain danger and criticism. After all, isn't that what this country is about? Don't vote for the libertarians. You don't have to. But at least vote your conscience. Acknowledge the right of others to do the same. If we get 4 more years of Trump, fine. 8 more years of Biden, sure. But political campaigns end at some point. There are term limits and bound. It does not matter who wins the 2020 election, but the president that it sets. We find ourselves at a crossroads where the opposition, having already been divided and split, discourages the voices of other competing parties still in the game to attempt a shot at a majority. That is not a democratic process, for if Trump's opponents want a shot at the Oval Office, they need not to take the attack strategy learned from the Republicans in the 2016 election, as it is far too late. Defend yourself and stand your ground. There is nothing wrong in standing together, but if your groups stand apart, a divided nation is not the same as a free-thinking nation. And a country where a higher class knows the results of the next election plays cat and mouse is not a democracy. It is a plutocracy. Vote wisely. Vote solemnly. Vote like you mean it. Vote like you know who the candidate yourselves. Vote like your life depends on it. And most importantly, vote for who you agree with, not who will spice up the polls. So vote for Trump or for Biden, but consider Don Blankenship from the Constitutional Party, or Rocky De La Fuente from the Independent Vote, American Solidarity, the Weed Party, Prohibition Party. These various landscapes reflect the division in our nation. And the way to curb that division might just be to divide it some more. We live in a historic moment. Make it count. Because the ones who call others spoilers are oftentimes the real spoilers in political discussion. This is Mongolium, signing off.
south to the border, Vermonters come down with your breeches of deerskin and jackets of brown, with your red woolen caps and your